All right, so we're going to bring our meeting back to order. And the next item on the agenda is our executive reports, which starts with Kevin's CEO report. So Kevin, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lorraine. I'm just finishing chewing on my cracker.
Do you want me to change the order?
No. No, I have
multitask?
I have at least 2 hours of items for you and the remaining audience out there. So I'll be fairly brief. Number of things, of course, going on of note. First, the federal budget news. Of course, we've been looking forward to last week's announcement for, well, in some respects, a year since the PTIF-1 program was announced. When we received the news of the significant federal contribution, but knowing that that was only the down payment. Well, the big money came last week, the $2.2 billion committed to the TransLink programs and the mayor's vision. It is the most ever of a federal contribution for public transportation in this region, and I understand one of the largest single infrastructure commitments from the feds for any program in quite a while. So I think we are very grateful for that going forward. It certainly signals, in my view, the ongoing momentum with the projects, but I think more importantly, the reality of these projects are going to happen. Because we're not going to leave $2.2 billion on the table. I don't see the province doing that, and I don't see this organization and the mayors doing that. That said, we still have a lot of work to do, sets in motion the next steps in the conversations with the province. The election, month-long election campaign gets in the way of the real negotiations, but certainly right after the election, I think it allows us to hit the ground running very much so. The objective remains to try to get to a final deal with the province by the end of the summer, early fall, in the ideal. That would then allow the Mayor's Council in this body to do the final piece, which would be identifying the funding from the regional side so that we keep these projects on target. We are moving forward well with the three mega projects in terms of their timing, so that keeping on schedule with all the funding agreements will be very important. We were a little disappointed, however, with one of the funding programs announced that we thought might be a potential opportunity for the Patello Bridge, and that's the trade corridor funding. So we're going to continue to work with the federal government to identify where and how federal funding, whether through grant funding or the infrastructure bank, can support the Patello project going forward. Status of the service and major projects. I think you're going to hear a little bit from Jeff briefly as well on the mayor's plan. We continue to meet our targets. That started January 6th with the SkyTrain and SeaBus improvements. Tomorrow we will be making an announcement in a little press event at the Hamilton Transit Center. Hayden will be hosting us out there for the first big bus service improvements. And this will be the largest increase in bus service in a long time here, and not soon enough. Going forward, the bus service increases start April 24th, and then again in June, and then again in September, and then again in December, and then the following year. So it really is exciting going forward. A lot of stress to hire those bus operators from HR, Gene, and Hayden's folks going. Hayden laughs at that. But that's obviously that's what took a while to get the bus service out. But we're making our targets on the hiring, thanks to the good works of HR and the training folks in CMBC. Jeff, I think, will show you the dashboard. We put up a dashboard. Jeff's over there. We put up a dashboard on the website a few days ago that gives the general public the opportunity to track our progress against our commitments going forward. As you know, we launched Evergreen, the Evergreen extension in early December, and then again on December 19th, the bus service changes. We did do a round of media in February when we had our first early indications of the ridership on Evergreen. It's still holding about 30,000 a day. New information that I've gotten from the planning team, from Sarah Ross, who was here talking about the custom transit program. Overall ridership in the Northeast sector, after only about 2 months, so very preliminary, so just a caveat, very preliminary. Overall ridership in the sector, combined bus and the rail, is up about 20% since all these changes took place. Evergreen's driving that, but the bus service changes are having their effect as well. West Coast Express ridership's down a little bit. I would consider that really early to understand the dynamic, but there was a lot of speculation how people who now have the option of taking the Evergreen Express, the Evergreen extension, might change their patterns who are taking West Coast Express now. So we'll continue to look at that very closely. If anything else, it's providing better options, really, for people, whether they are former West Coast Express customers or not. Park and ride use at the two park and rides in the area are also up pretty sharply. Not all the bus service changes were perfect. They weren't. We fully expected there would be some challenges with the bus service changes. I think in January, I believe, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, or Hayden, correct me if I'm wrong, we did some nice tweaking for some of the routes to better make the connections with West Coast Express. We heard from customers very quickly that their buses were missing the train by like 2 minutes, kind of thing. So the CNBC scheduling guys were able to move on that very quickly. And I think those were community shuttle routes, I believe, that we adjusted the schedule. So we're able to do that outside of the normal sheet change. Then in April and in June as well, we're making some other adjustments to some of the routing changes that we heard from customers where we could have made some improvements. So that's helped along by the added hours that are coming forward from the mayor's plan. So I think probably maybe at the June meeting we can have a more formal report from Jeff and his team on the results. That'll give you a good 6 months. And of course, as we've been reporting before, the launch of all of this, particularly the bus service changes, happened just when the snowfall started arriving, as well as the holiday season. So really that first month, 6 weeks, if not 8 weeks of the bus service, very hard to understand what was going on with ridership on the bus side. More broadly, ridership trends, again, very preliminary information, but first 2 months of the year continues the trend we ended last year. We ended 2016 with a 4.5% ridership growth system-wide, fueled largely by the strong economy. That's really the most important thing that drives transit ridership. We're certainly looking forward this year as we start adding service in all modes to see how that will bump the ridership. But in the first 2 months of the year, we're seeing about a 4% growth year over year, even from last year. The SkyTrain is absolutely leading the way on that. Canada Line, Expo Millennium Line, the Evergreen Line is surely showing some of that bump. Seabus is up 5%, which is kind of interesting. Again, I would caution it's early, but the analysts have told me with just the Sunday service increase that we put in January, we're seeing some measurable increase in Seabus service. We are planning to get Seabus, again, funded by the mayor's plan, up to its full projected service level in the months ahead. We'll have an announcement of that as we get into the summer season. On a different note, as you know, a number of weeks ago, the province, Ministers Stone and Fassbender, announced a regime that would make ride-sharing a reality here in the province by the holiday season. I was asked to attend the event, didn't say anything, but I was asked to attend the event with a number of other stakeholders. We're looking forward to, if the regulations do finally take effect, and if ride-sharing is coming to the region, we very much are looking forward to figuring out ways to partner with the ride-sharing companies. I do believe that, and I know that the team here believes that it improves overall mobility for folks. So notwithstanding issues with the cab companies and so on and so forth, side of its own secondary or separate issue, we do believe that it improves mobility, and there really opens up really cool opportunities for this transit agency to up the ante on mobility. Working on first mile, last mile challenges that might be presenting themselves to the system, maybe developing microtransit opportunities that are not within our resources to provide, and even with the HandyDART program. I think this could be a fascinating change and improvement in how we're ultimately able to provide trips for folks. You heard a lot of the discussion earlier about taxi cabs. I know that some cities in the United States, at least, are beginning to sort of put their toe in the water with the ride-sharing companies on providing HandyDART type of service. So a lot coming forward on that. For our customers, the snow season was certainly tough. I want to applaud our employees working the long hours, you know, to keep those buses operational in the snow. The SkyTrain attendants and the folks within SkyTrain to do everything they needed to do to keep the system operational during the snow. They really did a great job. That said, particularly on the bus side, there were disruptions during the snow season, so that's kind of inevitable. Two notable things I want to report, and both Hayden and Richard Sykes, I think, will have that in their reports. On the SkyTrain side, very disappointing with Canada Line. Canada Line had four very significant, it's four, right, Richard? Four very significant back-to-back service disruptions getting over the bridges. It was never happened with Canada Line before. I know that Vivian King and I both reached out directly to the general manager of the Canada Line operation. Since had several conversations, we participated in an after-action debrief with them. Richard will talk a little bit more, but we are going to hold their feet to the fire. That was disappointing, and we need to get to the bottom of why there were those disruptions, why their trains could not operate over the rails with a little bit of snow and ice, which they have had since it opened. It wasn't the first time. This wasn't, you know, a 2-foot snowfall kind of thing. So that was challenging, and I know that it was really tough for our customers who had some pretty poor service during that time. That said, after the first outage and then the second outage, the folks at Canada Line, I think they worked absolutely 24/7 to do everything they could to support the customer even when the trains couldn't operate, and also CNBC responding very quickly with bus bridges. Then the other side of the coin on the bus side, we don't own the right-of-way or manage it. So Hayden's been interfacing with the cities now, and I think he'll talk a little bit about that going into next year's snow seasons and have a better understanding of how to work with the cities to make sure the corridors where the buses are operating are free of snow and ice. In January, we launched the Accountability Center. We did a little media around that. Not a lot of people look at the Accountability Center, but it's there, and our KPIs are there, and I think it sends a message to the general public and our employees that monitoring performance is important, and I look forward to kind of the Accountability Center Dashboard 2.0 as we continue to improve on it. We spent the last 2 hours talking about custom transit, but you'll also remember last spring and summer, as we were closing the fare gates, there was quite a bit of conversation about making sure fare gates are accessible for people who cannot tap. And we had committed to creating a technology solution. We have that technology solution. Hats off to our IT folks, to Lloyd and his team, and the Compass people for developing kind of our own one-off approach. And we've tested it now and shown it to many of our stakeholders. I think it was last week. Was it last week we talked to stakeholders, I think, about the technology. It's very straightforward. Proximity reader using RFID technology. The individual would have some kind of a fob or some device as they approach the gate, right? I think we tested it at about 6 feet or 6 meters or 6 feet. And then they just pass right through the existing disabled gate. So we don't have to build any new gates, and it's a very dignified way to get this done. We have to go out for procurement for the electrical work and the device itself. We'd be looking to stand up 3 test stations as soon as possible. I don't have the dates at this point in time. It will be over the next several months. We should have at least 50% of the stations equipped if we stay on schedule with the procurement by the end of the year, but we will do that strategically. So we'll try to make sure that the stations that are most likely to be used for people with these needs are dealt with first. So we're doing our best to make our commitment. And finally, we opened up 2 elevators at Metrotown last week. That's really good. I went out with Sandy and took a look. I wanted to see how it looks. The 2 elevators and the staircase in the central part of the station. A 3rd elevator will open up fairly soon. I was chatting with the mayor during the presentation. This is not an easy project, as Sandy reminds me, because I asked him, why does this take so long? We're basically building 3 new stations at Metrotown. And so the center portion's now open. And I think it's after the long, difficult time our customers have had, it at least provides some better accessibility. And the good news is, I think June, July, the west station entrance is going to open. I've seen some pictures of it. I didn't have my hard hat on, I didn't get a tour, but it really looks beautiful. I think it's going to be gorgeous. There'll be 4 escalators in that station. We're going to try to get that up on the blog and show people what's going on. But real progress is being made on Metrotown. And my wife can finally stop complaining to me about that announcement on the train, the elevator's closed at Metrotown. So she just, every time she's on the train, when are you going to open that elevator? So that's my report.
Thank you, Kevin. Is there any questions for Kevin on his report? Marcella.
Sorry, just a small technical thing. You're talking about the readers that, fall, whether so you use the existing gates, and then another time you might put it.
Yeah, I mean, that was the really cool approach that we came up with. We partnered with an outfit that we initially were talking to Cubic. And if we had to go through Cubic and do it through their gates, it would have taken a long time and would have been expensive. So we tried to find an alternative, and the alternative is to basically just install, correct me if I'm wrong, Lloyd, but it's pretty close to off-the-shelf RFID technology. And as you're approaching the gate, and we'll set the parameters. I think as I said, I think we tested it at 6 meters. We'll set the parameters on how close. We'll give a device to the individuals. The device we actually give the individuals might be different depending on their need and their disability. All they have to do is approach the gate, it'll open. The fares and how they'll pay the fares, we're going to work that out. It's not a lot of people. At the end of the day, the fares, exactly. It's not the relevant issue. We will figure it out. They're not trying to get in for free. So we'll figure that out. But it looks like a really, really good, easy technological fix. It'll be invisible to the rest of the public. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on then to Chief Lepard. Come up and speak to us about our policing.
See, that button's actually quite easy to use. It seemed way harder at the last meeting. Disguised. So, I'll try to be brief, because I know that you're a little bit behind schedule, so I'll just talk about a couple of things that I thought you might be interested in. First of all, I've talked to you before about our neighborhood police officers, so we have 6 of them, and they're a really key part of our service delivery model, and they're out there busily building relationships not only with other police forces and our jurisdictional partners and agencies that we draw on to help us deal with problems, for example, people that are chronically causing us problems, and so they're an important part of our strategy. It was great to see the Chief of Vancouver, who recently tweeted out how well our NPOs are working with his around issues that we have in common in Vancouver. We also coordinate with Coast Mountain Bus and BCRTC because they are a great liaison for us, and so you can see the tweet from Justin Biggs there that he'd actually gone for a ride along with one of the supervisors from the bus company. So we really see that as important as looking for opportunities to communicate, and Hayden and I are talking lots about opportunities to build synergy in the different work that we do. So a big part of our program, and the impact is being independently evaluated by a criminology professor from SFU. Safety on the system. So I want to talk just a little bit about vulnerable people. We've heard about one category of vulnerable people today, people that have disabilities. We deal with all kinds of vulnerable people on the system. We actually have a sergeant who's dedicated full time to dealing with those issues. Most of the things that he's dealing with are people who have mental illness issues, and that ends up causing problems for themselves and others on the system. But we're very linked into other police agencies like the Vancouver Police Department that has a very long-standing program called CAR 7 and others as well, and Surrey RCMP has a similar program called CAR 67, which is just a police officer and either a psychiatric social worker or a psychiatric nurse that work together. So we're very linked in with those services because we draw on them frequently when we're trying to problem solve with, as I say, people that are chronically causing problems. In terms of working with the other elements of the organization,
A party's going on down there.
I thought that was a submarine going down or something. Very linked in with, for example, Coast Mountain Bus Company. In fact, in the last 6 months, we have done about 20 presentations to bus operators, for example, and teaching them about how to defuse and escalate situations so that they won't get worse. The picture up there is one of our neighborhood police officers, Constable Shipley, and that is actually at a fundraising at Pathways, which is an agency in Richmond that provides a lot of help to people with mental illness. We're very linked into them. They're one of the services that we draw on to assist us, and we were being recognized there for our contributions there. And the last thing I'll talk about there is about naloxone kits. So you all know that we have a very significant opioid crisis, a fentanyl crisis, going on in BC. That's we're seeing it across Canada now and in North America as well, and it's even being talked about in the White House. So we want to be part of the solution. We were one of the first to be willing for our officers to carry naloxone kits. The province has been a great partner in providing funding so that all our officers could be equipped with naloxone kits, and as of last night we've actually successfully used it 4 times to save lives. So that is not only important because we have a duty as police officers to save lives, it's one of the highest order duties that we have, but also if you have someone collapsing in a station and that sort of thing, it causes distress to the staff and customers, and may even end up, if you don't know why the person has gone down, it might be, you know, considered possibly a crime scene, and you can end up with a station being shut down. So a big part of system resiliency is us being there and preventing that sort of thing from happening and dealing with it efficiently so that the system is not going down. Just an update for you. We've been working with TransLink, and a really good result that we wondered if it would ever come, but a change in legislation. And one of the big problems that I heard loud and clear from my officers when I came on board a year ago was the frustration of not being able to deal with people that they saw vaulting out of the fare paid zone, clearly not having paid their fare. And these are 100% of the time, these are the people that are criminals that cause problems on our systems, that are assaulting people, stealing from people, and so on. And that's not unique to here. Research across North America is the same thing. And so now we have an offense that is not a fare infraction notice like we do for people that don't pay their fare, which is a civil process managed by TransLink. It is a provincial offense. That means something to us because it means the data goes in our database. It means that they're going to court if they don't pay their fine. It means all kinds of things for us in terms of it being a powerful tool to deal with these people. And like I say, people wondered about the impact of the gates, and you know, we can really see from the revenue and so on that law-abiding people are now paying their fares. The people that are not law-abiding, they never did and they never will. And what the gates have done is made it way more obvious to us who these people are, because they're ones crawling over the gates, under the gates, trying to get out the exit doors and so on. And so, whereas 2015, before the gates, we arrested 591 people who were wanted on arrest warrants from various jurisdictions, that actually went up significantly to over 700 in 2016 after the gates came in April. And that's because they're just more obvious now to us who the troublemakers are. So it's been one of the incidental benefits of the gates to us, is making it easier to spot the troublemakers. Partnerships. So now with the Evergreen extension open late last year, it was important that we have build good partnerships with the police of jurisdiction there. So that's Coquitlam RCMP and Port Moody Police. So lots of interaction between me and Sean Maloney, the officer in charge in Coquitlam, and Chief Chris Rattenbury from Port Moody, who's, I think today is his last day, and new chief there, Dave Flugel, who I also know well. And so we've not only been working well at the at the management level, but the operational level as well. They've been a really great partner. We've been doing joint patrols, which magnifies our impact, but magnifies their impact as well. And they've learned that our environment is quite complex. So it's really helpful for them to be oriented to that in case they do need to come on the system for any reason. Should look at my notes once in a while. Like I mentioned earlier, we've been working with Hayden's people, and we've actually created a little bit of task force to look at opportunities for us to coordinate and build synergy, for example, between the police officers and Hayden's transit security officers. So we think that there's all kinds of opportunities, again, to be a force multiplier for each other. And so I look forward to the results of that work. And then last, because I don't want Kevin to steal all the limelight about all the good news, is that always good when you can report that crime is going down. And, you know, I won't take credit for the sun coming up in the morning, but policing does matter. We've been always trying to focus our resources in the right places at the right time to try and impact on crime. And we've had a couple of things that have worked in our favor. Is number one, I'm told for the first time in 5 years we're up to our full strength. We haven't had any problems recruiting and making sure all our positions are filled. We did get a small increase, which we appreciate. Your board approving and recognition of opening of Evergreen, and we've been working very hard. There are obviously always other factors involved, but I do note that in the last couple of years in the region, the crime has been going up slightly, not down, after quite a few years of going down. We're seeing crimes on the system trending down. But like I say, if you look at the warrants executed, it's gone from 591 to 706, which is a pretty substantial increase, and probably is one of the factors in crime going down, because we're taking the people that are causing the problems out of circulation. And then the last thing I'll mention is in my report, but it's something we're proud of, is that I don't put too much stock in the reported sex offenses going down, because we know that anywhere in the world that we look at, including on transit systems, probably 90% of the offenses aren't being reported. But nonetheless, all other things being equal, what we've seen is a fairly significant decrease in reported sex offenses, despite there being more publicity around it, our campaign out there encouraging reporting and so on. So tentatively take that as a good sign. But the one thing that we can take to the bank is, you know, I've challenged my officers, even though they were doing very well in their investigations, to do even better, and they have. And we've increased our solve rate for sex offenses by 9%. So we're proud of that, and that will bleed over into other types of investigations that we do as well. So I will stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Any questions? Well, if nobody else, I have a question for you. So, Doug, I noticed that in April we're having an international conference on transit policing. And I'm just curious, is there a kind of an analysis of jurisdictions that have police forces and what's unique about, you know, because we read about and hear about people complaining, why do we have a police force here? Yeah. And I'm just wondering, now that we're having this conference, it had me question in my mind, what makes a jurisdiction in a region appropriate for transit police, and when is it better for the community policing to do that work?
How much time do you have?
So well, maybe you could write a report.
You know, as Kevin knows, well, I'd be happy to, and as Kevin knows, that although there's some sort of policing on transit systems all across Canada, we're the only true public armed police force. But what's also different in Vancouver and Victoria are really the only two cities in Canada that are not policed by a police force that's responsible for the majority of the census metropolitan region. And so what you're talking about, for example, in Metro Vancouver, the service area for transit is 21 municipalities that are served by 17 different police agencies. So imagine trying to provide, you know, a seamless policing across the region for that. So in a place like Toronto, for example, where they do have private security that do have some special constable powers like we used to have, but they have one police force. In the United States, where they do not generally, or they often don't have a metropolitan police force, transit police forces are quite common. Dallas Area Rapid Transit Police, who lost several members in the sniper shooting. Bay Area Rapid Transit Police, Boston. Transit police forces are actually quite common down there. The British Transport Police has over 3,000 police officers on their transit system. So what I would say is that, you know, it probably, especially in our environment, is a best practice. The other thing that I would say is people should remember their history, because I do remember when the transit police was created and what the headlines were before that, when we did have special provincial constables with a certain amount of authority, and there was a unanimous consensus at the time that they couldn't do the job. They couldn't do it 1 inch off the property. They couldn't enforce the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. They couldn't arrest someone wanted on a warrant, which we do 700 times a year, and which academic research has said makes a very significant contribution to safety in the region. So there are a lot of things that they couldn't do, and the headlines were bad, and the perceptions of safety on the transit system were not good. Now they are much better. We still have people putting out some misinformation and myth out there about what a private security person can do, and I can assure you, having talked to the OIC of Surrey RCMP or the Chief of Vancouver, they don't want to take on that responsibility, nor do they disagree that we can do it much more efficiently across the region, across jurisdictions. So that's my short elevator speech.
Great elevator speech, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on then. Thank you very much, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Richard, I think you're next on the list. You're going to talk to us about BC Rapid Transit, as I fondly hear, or you fondly describe it, as a rail company. There you go.
Good afternoon all. Vivian sends her apologies, but she's sunning herself in Australia.
We don't want to hear about it, do we, Richard?
No. I'm just amazed that the rain has finally stopped. Chair, board members, good afternoon. Please, Frank. So, we are pleased to report that our Expo Millennium Line targets were exceeded for the whole of last year. West Coast Express, as we know, we've reported in October, are having some difficulties, and our reporting and our KPIs for their on-time performance fell below the targets over the year. We are pleased to report that we as a team have been working really hard with CP. CP have been very receptive, and throughout February we are now sustaining the numbers back to where they should be. We're back above 98%, which is great news. That was due to a change in some of the people and some of the understandings, but everyone's been receptive and it's back on the mend, which is great news for us. As the rail company, as we continue for BCRTC to work on our state of good repair, we're focusing on our track performance, we're focusing on our grinding performance, and we're focusing on repairing and replacing the aging rail in the downtown corridor. Over the previous few months and over the next several months, we are single tracking every evening to ensure that we can replace the rail that we need to replace in the downtown corridor, which is mainly between Main Street and Waterfront. We thank our customers for our time. We've done some real marketing, some real interactions. Vivian's very proactive in this area, along with Mike and myself. I'm learning as the engineer in the business that the customer is the first person and the first priority. It's a very different mentality from an engineering perspective, but we understand. As we learn that path, one of the things we're learning in engineering is actually Mike Richard's my biggest customer. Some of our learnings are that we believe that it's the person who sits on the vehicle. That's engaging all of our stakeholders across the business, which is great news. Just to dwell very slightly on rail grinding, it's a very specialised piece of kit that we import into the railway. It polishes the top of the rail. It sustains the rail profile, as we call it, which is the nice rounded inside edge of the curve. It also reduces noise and corrugation. That's starting to be managed. Last year we managed to grind the whole railway for the first time. So we did everything. There was minor parts of stations and some of the pocket tracks we never got to, but the main line as an entity was ground in its entirety. This year, as we move forward with that plan into our state of good repair and sustaining our rail and making sure we have good neighbours, we will grind at least 50% of the rail again this year. So we'll bring a contractor back to help us get into that phase where at least 50% of the rail is ground year on year, until we get to the stages where we know that we're in a state of good repair. Grinding helps us sustain the life, and it's good asset management practice to do it. It's a change for us as a business rather than changing rail. We want to get to a state of good repair and maintaining our assets underneath our EAM strategy. As I said earlier on, proactive approach with regarding engaging our customers for the single tracking. We've been out, we make announcements, everyone's aware, there's posters out, and engaging with TransLink, we're getting to the community and advising them that we're doing single tracking. Please, Fran. We implemented phase 1 of our service increases back end of last year. We have a weekday morning and PM peak increase, some 15 minutes and some 60 minutes, where we implemented phase 1, as Kevin mentioned in his report. We also managed to improve our weekend headways by a minute, from 7 down to 6 minutes, which has been met with some positive interactions. As both Doug and Kevin has alluded to, working with Aidan, we managed to tweak little bits of services that we never got in the scheduling. We took away 6 minutes on the Evergreen line from maintenance to allow the interaction between bus and rail to make sure there was a connection. Huge that we're all working together. And the Canada line also added 2 trains during the peak service, which was part of our understanding and part of sitting down with them and negotiating why we need to move the people and how we need to move the people. It's been very receptive, and we're all working together. Please, Fran. Please. Our weather conditions, our heavy snowfall, we put an awful lot of effort in as the rail companies to ensure that we kept Metro Vancouver moving and met our customers' expectations. We attended trains when they're heavy times. We have some systems out there for platform detection. At the end of the day, we manned the trains. We kept the trains running 24/7 where we needed to. We had to curtail some maintenance activities. We've subsequently played and caught back up with those activities. Great interaction. There was an awful lot of first-time users, those people that couldn't physically get into their car. We made sure not only were the trains attended, and we invested some extra money to make sure the platforms were still attended so that he wasn't arriving and not knowing what to do. Huge effort. We are working very closely with the Canada line regarding their struggles during the snowfall. From an engineering perspective, we're starting to exchange ideas to understand what it amounts to. Mike Richard has been very active talking with Lee, their assistant general manager, around what we need to do. There'll be a report forthcoming, but we are all on the same page. During that snow period, we had to attend all the stations from a passenger alarm perspective. Some of the piers and guide systems that we have for those intrusion devices are affected. The Evergreen line new equipment was actually very, very receptive to the snow. A lot better than the old equipment, and met all of our expectations and then some. A little gem, just so you understand. So during the snow period, just on BCRTC rail, we actually laid down over 3,000 bags of de-icing equipment during that time. It's for our passengers, for our customer, it's for all of the internal stakeholders, for all of us to get to and from work. The platforms are all covered. Far ends become very deep in snow. We have to get out there before we open up at 4 o'clock in the morning. The teams work exceptionally well, whether it's operations or maintenance, to ensure that happened. Just gives you some perspective around how much that really matters to us. And just while we're on that, working together, during the Cuta fall of last year conference, we had 2 SDAs recognised for bravery. Heroism was the actual act. And it's great to see that. It brings morale up. It allows the unions to see what was going on. It shows that we're valuing in our staff. It was absolutely great news. Met with Vivian and I and Mike, meeting those and shaking their hands and saying congratulations and well done. Please, Frank. And last but not least, we managed to sign our 3-year COPE agreement on the 17th of November. It gets us into peace and rest now till the end of summer 2019. There was some give and take on both sides. It took us over a year to get to that negotiated closeout. I'd just like to thank everyone that was actively involved. The executive were exceptionally supportive. Aidan, Kathy, Chris, and Annie, anyone who's actually gave us some time to allow that to get to a close. and gets us rest for the next 3 years. That's my report.
Great, thank you. Is there any questions? Larry, and then we'll go to Jan. No, you know what? Janet's gonna go first. You get to go first all the time. You're Mr. Quick.
Yeah, really, this is just an observation. I think at a fairly recent meeting, I had asked for some further information on the mystery shopper program, which Fran and Kyla Damon Williams had very kindly provided. And I just wanted to say I was very impressed with the comprehensiveness of that survey information. It's obviously a really useful tool for continuous improvement. But if people don't know, I'd asked for the overall scores as well. And all three services scored in the high 90s. I was quite surprised at that. So SkyTrain, Canada Line, and West Coast Express. SkyTrain just a couple of percentage points behind the others, but overall just very strong. I wanted to just acknowledge that and say that was really welcome news from my point of view.
Thank you, Janet. That's really nice.
Thank you. Okay, Larry, you can go next.
I just have a question, Richard. Last year we had a delegation that came worrying about the noise in the Northeast Falls Creek area, and you were talking then about grinding, and now you've told us you've ground the system, and in addition you've got new rails, I think you said, in that area. Can we now say the noise has gone down, and B, have we gotten back to those customers and those neighbors to see if they feel that way, and really close the file on that?
The answer in short is yes. I still meet with the people on a regular basis at Commercial Broadway and the strata councils around the Quebec Street. They are very different in active in their noise. We received the thanks after Christmas with regards to how the noise had reduced. The Quebec Street represents that whole of the condominiums there.
Yeah.
And the lady's name eludes me, but I'm going to see her again certainly within the next month, to appease and assure what we're doing at that area. That double S curve there does create noise. Okay, you know, one way you've got the river, the other side you have all the condominiums. But we're playing very, very, very close with those to ensure that they're engaged. They listen to me, I listen to them. They now have an engineer. I take my senior rail director with me to ensure that we appease the answers there and then. They've got back in touch, Larry, not last week, the week before, because Vivian's back next week. I wrote back saying, happy to engage. We'll come and see you certainly within the next 4 weeks. I've found that the interaction helps. The ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily, that's not the right way of where we are. It will only densify in that area. The more I can do to appease before they come here can only help us as a business.
Can you at some point just give us a note back on what their current attitude is as a result of what I hear is a perfect way to handle customer issues? I'd just like a note back to confirm that their attitude also is that things have gotten better and that their problem is being resolved.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll get Vivian to give an update next meeting.
Thank you.
Richard, as well, you guys are going to be doing, I think you guys are doing at BCRTC a noise assessment study later on this year. Maybe you want to let the board know, and that's in part as a result of the public input on this.
That's an excellent point. So Sanya and I are working together to come up with a scope of works that says we'll measure everything across the railway, and as we design and as we wander forward, we'll be able to use that as a benchmark. It'll take us best part of the year for it to get done, but we think it's critical now with identification that we understand what that amounts to.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Murray.
Thank you. Just wanted to raise, there's under, you may not have this in front of me, but it says West Coast Express unfavorable variance to target was driven by boarded passenger figures of 2.5 million in 2016 as opposed to the target of 3.2 million. And that difference surprised me. Can you explain what that means?
So there was,
Like, it said that the budget target was 3.2 million on West Coast Express, and the actual was 2.5. I may be putting you on the spot here, I apologize.
no, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, what's happening with respect to West, I would expect, given the history of West Coast Express, we would have been better, our target and our actual would be closer together.
So we actually believe that there was an error in the calculation, is the true hearted number. As to why it was reported in that way, it was something I need to talk to Vivian about to clarify. So if I can get back to you with a truthful answer at the next meeting, it'll be happy, or I can get communicate communication from Vivian straight to you.
And the reason why
It's such a high number.
The cost per kilometer for the passenger wasn't as significant as the difference in the total ridership.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more, I was just more, I guess, surprised at the fact that there was such a difference there, given West Coast Express is a relatively long-standing service, and we should be able to project fairly accurately. So I raise it if you could.
It's a fair challenge, Marion. I'll make sure you get a proper answer.
Thank you, Richard, for doing that. And Anne?
Thank you. You mentioned very sensible and commendable action of putting down something to prevent slips and falls on ice. What do you do for the environmental impact? Do you pick a less or more friendly environmental substance, salt or ice melt, or I don't know what else is on the market? Is that a factor in the consideration?
It's always factored into consideration. The environment's something that, certainly very close to my heart, and, us as an entity. So at the end of the day, everything we can use, we try to comply with any legislative rules in every way, shape or form, and we only apply liberal amounts where needed. It's not something you want to spread anywhere and everywhere, and it's something we're talking to the Canada line about to ensure that there's some consistency across the whole of the network.
That's good. Best practice.
Yeah. What the province use, we try to use,
Yeah,
and
you
then
may
that
not
way
know at that
everyone's using
micro
the same
level,
thing.
but just that's something to keep foremost because there is a runoff issue and people track it everywhere. And
Yeah, you don't want it liberally sprayed around where not needed.
thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
So I think we'll invite Hayden up. We saved the best for last. Hayden?
I'm always complaining to Kevin that we're last. He always says I'm too sensitive, so thank you.
And Kevin just told me you've had lots of attention already today.
Too much attention.
So I
I'm not
don't
one that
think
likes
we
a
need
lot
to
of
give you
attention,
too much
so-
more here.
And a lot of talking, so I should have brought a glass of water. Thank you. I was just thinking as I was sitting down, I had my managers meeting about 3 weeks ago. There's about 100 or so managers as we roll out our 2017 business plan, and my opening remarks sort of track through the core principles of the bus company: safety, customer service, those sorts of things. And then I slid into the culture of our bus company, and one of the very important pieces of the bus company is we're nimble and flexible. And I've certainly learned that since I arrived here in 2011. Being flexible and nimble in a bus company is very important. We're dealing with road construction, motor vehicle accidents, bus bridges. We're dealing with that all the time, at the same time keeping our focus on the customer and service delivery and safety. So that segues into what I'm, wished I didn't have to talk about, was our snow days and our snow event, which is the first one. And so that probably challenged us on being nimble and flexible more than we ever have in a number of years. So I thought I would just take a quick minute, sort of tell you our protocols. We do have a very structured protocol for snow days. It was tested. I'm told by the folks that have been at the bus company for 30 years, it's the worst that they've seen in 30 years. We have partners when we deal with snow days. One of our partners is Environment Canada. We talk to them constantly. Our other partner is all the municipalities out there. We're only as good as the roads that are cleared. At a time when there's a heavy snow downpour, it's when the public wants to use transit. Thank you. Thanks very much. It's when the public wants to use transit the most, yet we have to reduce service in snow events. So it's quite a conflict for us, and our folks take great pride in going out there and delivering a service. So the name of the game for snow is to be proactive. That's how we are successful. So we get a hint, or Environment Canada tells us we're about to have snow in 12 hours or 15 hours. We ask a lot of questions: what the temperature is going to be, when do you believe the snowfall is going to arrive, how long is it going to be, how much snow is it going to be, and then we act accordingly. So our 60-foot buses, and for those of you new on the board, a 60-foot bus is the one that's got the little accordion at the back. That's sort of a trailer bus. That one is actually powered by the very back axles. It's a push vehicle. That's the way it's designed. That is a real challenge for us on ice and snow. So one of the first things we do is we that night, we take those and keep them off the road and put out 40-footers. So we're reducing our capacity. We work very closely with all the cities. We've got communication lines. They have priorities, streets that they make sure are clear, hospitals, fire, transit. We work very closely with them. What time are you going to do those streets? What is your priority? Which ones are you going to do? We talk to all municipalities, including SFU, and then we make all those adjustments to put our 40-foot buses on those routes. And so for the most part, it works. Didn't work well this time, because I think, as we all know, and I don't have to go through it, we were very overwhelmed. The cities were very overwhelmed. Environment Canada, did they even get it 50% right? Probably not. That's not picking on them. Microclimates. We have a lot of microclimates in this region. We just don't realize. We know it's sunny in Richmond, where I live, and it's raining over on the west end and things like that. We know that happens all the time, and we don't really spend a lot of time. But in a 0 degrees or a -1, it's significant. And so they would predict that there would be snow on the North Shore. Nothing on the south slope of Vancouver, where we have our largest depot. We put our buses out at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, the 40-footers, to find out that we were into heavy snow and they couldn't make it up Oak Street or Granville Street. The snowfall came, and it came in large amounts. The cities did their very best. There's no question about it. They got behind. They couldn't help it. Huge snowbanks where they plowed along all the bus stops. And so our customers had a lot of trouble. We had slips and falls, a lot of trouble. Operators were having trouble getting to work. Everybody was working overtime, and we found, and it's a really good news story, our operators were willing to help out wherever they could. But after 8 hours of driving in that snow, they were fatigued. And those are just some of the challenges, not to get in a lot of the detail of it. So as we do at every event, and we put glycol, as Tony well knows what glycol is from the airport, we actually put glycol on all the trolley lines, because they freeze up to make sure that they're active. So we get ahead of all of those things. And so, we did our very best, and as we always do internally, we do snow debriefs. We probably have 5 or 6 of them after every event. Of course, it never ended. February, we had it again. And so we reached out, and Jeff Cross helped us with this. We reached out to all the cities and the municipalities to have a meeting, to be part of a debrief, and what do we do next year. We're not going to have the assumption that this is 1 out of 30 years, and we're good for the next 29, so we'll let the next management team worry about it. We decided to get ahead of it. I was very pleased. Last Friday was here. We had over 33 or 34 folks come from all the cities. We had a very, very good discussion. We learned a lot from them. They've learned a lot from us. They certainly were unhappy on February the 6th, when we had 255 buses stuck out in the system on the road, blocking roads and everything else. And we said, well, that was because the forecast was rain. And so we had a very good debrief, and that's really the thesis of me raising the snow days. How do we go forward? They certainly agreed with us. They were willing participants to sit down with us. Kevin has brought some very good feedback to us, what they did at King County in developing corridors, focusing on those corridors with the city, offering services. The public knows that on a major snow event, if you can get to that corridor, whether it's Oak Street or King George, that we will offer a service there, that the cities will do a priority. I know in King County, they put chains on corridors. We're not opposed to putting chains on. We asked the cities, well, chains means a proportion of that we're going to be driving those buses on drive payment. Do you have a problem with that? And they said no. And so the result of all that, and I'll just wrap up the snow part, is that we're going to have steering committees with them, and we're going to look at sort of a continuous improvement, offering the public what do we do when we have a major snow event. Getting the public to SkyTrain stations, of course, very, very important. Next slide. 3 very quick customer enhancements in our CI lost properties at CI. On Saturday, January 7th, was the first day we had Saturday openings of our lost and found. We have about 180 folks a day that come Monday to Friday to lost and found. A lot of feedback. People say, I work, I've lost, things. Why don't you open on the weekends? So on January 7th, we started on Saturdays, and we're getting about 80 people a day. I mean, so a great customer enhancement there. We're going to be starting a live chat on our call center, hopefully in Q2 or Q3. Very pleased about that. Julie wants to start it Monday to Friday, sort of 8 to 4, just see what kind of a pickup we have on that. But that's one more enhancement for our customers going forward. Our callback feature that we implemented last year has been just terrific. Some months, not a lot of takers on it because there's not a lot going on out there, and our agents can take the calls. In November, we had 5 callbacks, and this is interesting. December, snow. February, snow. December, we had over 100, and February, over 50, and that's good news that our customers at least are using that, and at a time when customers really need to talk to us, we have the vehicle to do that. HandyDART. We've heard a lot about HandyDART. Louise is the second part of her job, and of course she was very involved in what you heard this morning. It's basically running the service delivery part of HandyDART. And so I just have some very quick sort of rapid bullet points. I'll just share with you some of the initiatives since I spoke with you last time. In 2016, we're at the year end, 25,000 extra trips were provided on HandyDART. 2017 with the Mayor's Vision, and we did a media event on this. We will have an additional 45,000 service hours, which equates to over 85,000 additional trips 2017 over 2016. That's very good news. Our annual HandyDART customer service survey, 8.5 for 2016. That's a good number. HandyDART's assigned a person to work closely with the wait list, which is a real frustration for the customers. So we're going to put somebody to focus strictly on the wait list. We're improving our calls to customers when we have weather-related cancellations. HandyDART's a little bit different in weather, so they go to the side roads, of course. We all know about the side roads this winter. And not only do they go to the side roads, but the HandyDART drivers assist the customers up to their homes. And so they went to essential services a fair amount of time because the ability to deliver that service just wasn't safe. In November, we had the highest number of HandyDART trips since 2013 with 103,000 trips. And we registered 3,500 new HandyDART customers in 2016. Next one, this is a quick one, a good news one. I'm going to do electric buses. If we can flip that back. We're going to run a pilot program with BYD. They've offered a 3-month program on electric buses. My infrastructure people keep saying to me, Hayden, we already have 250 electric buses in the system called trolleys. So I'll say battery-powered electric buses. So you'll see it. We're just deciding what wrap to put around it. We'll probably run it in Vancouver, out of our Vancouver Transit Center. It'll start somewhere between mid-April and the end of April. We may run it to UBC on I think it's the 33, which is a good route to run it. So that'll be a great pilot project. We're very enthused about electric buses. We're meeting with New Flyer. In fact, Kevin and I and others are meeting with New Flyer on Monday just to have a discussion with them and where they are with electric buses and what they're willing to do for trials as we're talking to other manufacturers as well to come out. So it's an exciting time and very pleased about that. And then the final one, and most of you were downstairs, an exciting day for us. 3 years in the making to get to the decision to purchase the Aero Global barrier. 3 years ago, we did a risk assessment on workplace violence with WorkSafe. One of the recommendations coming out of that was to look at barriers. Very pleased to say the support that we at the bus company got from TransLink. We needed funding to purchase barriers that we, at the end of the day, wouldn't use, but just would trial and put those in. We got a lot of support from TransLink on that. We ran a trial for 2 years. 3 different manufacturers on 6 or 8 buses. We put those buses out in the field. We put those buses at our 6 depots. All kinds of operator feedback, customer feedback, accessibility feedback. Some of the issues that came up with barriers was a lot of glare at night, very poor airflow, can't hear soft-speaking customers. When I arrived in, I don't want to digress too much, when I arrived in 2011 and went out and spent a lot of time doing sessions with the operators, One of the things they told me, one of the most important things for their job, and what was rewarding to a bus operator, was interacting and talking to the customers. That was job rewarding for them, and they would say to me, don't ever take that away. And so this barrier addresses that with that sliding window. Those of you who were down there, we got good support. I was very pleased to see Unifor join us this morning and speak in support of it. WorkSafe was there today. They're very, very pleased with the initiative going forward. And so with that, probably spoken over my time.
Great.
That's
Thank
my
you.
report. Thanks.
Jim and then Murray. Thank you.
So a couple of questions. I'll start with the barrier for protection. At the Human Resources and Governance Committee, we talked about diversity in our employee ranks, and it seems there's lots more male bus operators than female. And do you have a prediction or even an objective when you are able to deliver a safer environment for drivers to increase female bus operators?
I hope we can, absolutely. All right. I mean,
So
that's not the reason for the barrier. The
Right.
reason for the barrier is strictly safety. Right? I can say that, you know, the feedback we've got, many of the female operators are very pleased with putting the barriers on. Yeah.
And then back to snow days, watching the evening news, and I may only have part of the story, the enduring image is all these students at SFU lined up in the cold because they want to get on the bus that may never come. And do we ever go back to the institution itself and say, you know, you should take some responsibility in terms of organizing the kids? They should maybe get like a ticket to line up or something. They can stay inside, study, as opposed to standing outside in the cold. And for a bus that may not come, like, how's that dialogue back and forth with them?
Well, we just had a meeting with the President Andrew Petter 3 weeks ago, and the VP, I forgot his name, Mark, I think it was. We talked about how can we improve all of that, and what service can we offer, and we're, you know, we're that's another area we talked about, putting chains on the buses. One of their issues for us is we have to pull the 60-foot bus off and put 40-foot on. And we don't have the ability to put more 40-footers on because we have the demand in the rest of the area. So my bad news to President Petter was we're actually reduced capacity. But you know, we'll continue to maintain the service as long as the day takes. And
Right, but do they have like a cavalier attitude about it? Like, oh, we're going to shut the university down, now it's TransLink's problem to get
no, I think
things
it's the
on.
opposite. I think they don't want to shut the university down, but my TCOM folks tell me the best people to communicate with through all the regions is SFU, that they're really on top of it. So, yeah.
Murray?
I didn't say that because
Anne
Anne's
wants
here.
to. Maybe I should let Anne go now to defend herself.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a disaster up there in Snowman. You not only get people that can't get up there, but you get people that can't leave, including staff. And there's medical events, there's, you know, there's poor students that studied up for their exams and can't get to them, those exams are on or off. And it's really hard to make a call up at the campus as to what you run, whether you run your day, whether you get to go up there, knowing you might not be able to get home, or whether you effectively wait for buses that might turn. I mean, there's some bigger, higher level solutions that we might come up with, I hope. But it is, and it puts people off even signing up for courses on the mountain. So that's
It's a real challenge.
Okay.
It's a real challenge.
Murray, thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Lori. I've got three different questions. One is there a group that gets together with manufacturers from time to time to talk about design issues that you face, like the rear-wheel drive on articulated buses? And we talked about this morning the floor level problem with HandyDART vehicles, and I'm sure there are other things like that. And there's a big enough market in North America where I'm sure there'd be some influence to saying, well, these are things that are bothering us, can you do something about it? And put some pressure on them. Is that?
Yes, well, through the industry representative, CUDA and NAFTA, we have that vehicle. We're talking to the manufacturers all the time.
And so, like, you're meeting with New Flyer on Monday. Do you give them that kind of feedback? Because I understand.
We give them a lot of
trying
feedback.
Trying to push,
warranty issues.
Trying to push a 60-foot bus from the rear in the snow is like almost like a disaster waiting to happen. So I'm assuming that that's, the second thing is that you talked about Environment Canada not being very accurate sometimes with respect to predictions. And I know, based on my past experience, that there are, you know, specialized weather agencies that offer services. And I'm wondering, have you, I guess, in other words, getting information from more than one source may help to increase the percentage of accuracy.
Sure.
Is that something that's done, or is that?
I don't think it's done. I mean, we're also working with the cities because, you know, they react to
Yeah.
what they hear as well. But that, I mean, that's, I'll follow up on that. That's
Because
good. That's
I
a
know
good
that
question.
I know that in Surrey, when I was with Surrey, that we had contracted with a weather agency that was intended to, you know, increase the potential for us to be more accurate with respect to salting and plowing and things like that. So I just raised that, not knowing whether it's
Sure.
the problem in the lower mainland is there's no radar to the west of us that helps to understand how those weather systems are coming in, and it's getting more accurate, but it isn't perfect. And so this area has got that problem with just how weather systems approach. And then the third thing is, curious, you said that the highest number of HandyDART hours of service that was provided, I guess you said December and November, was 103,000 trips or hours? Trips. And I'm curious as to why.
I'll get Louise to answer that.
Why were the number of trips in November different?
In December?
Well, all the way back to what, 2011? You said was the next highest month, and I was curious as to why was there?
Well, December we had reduced
No, I'm
trips
not
because of weather.
But no, the November trips, you said it was the highest month since some month back.
November
in
26th had the highest number of HandyDART trips since 2013 with 103,000.
Yeah, and I was curious, like, that surprises me because we haven't changed anything, have we?
Well, we added hours. Remember we had that $800,000 that we added in for 2016 and added.
Why did it dip,
trips.
is what I'm asking. Yeah, after
Because of the weather.
after 2013, why did it dip?
Oh,
Okay. You know, I don't know that. I'll find
Okay,
out.
because
I'll get that back. I don't have that information.
All right, thanks.
okay. Hayden, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to continue on. The next section on our agenda is the general reports, and some of this I'm going to call upon Jeff. We're going to do a little tag team on this, and a lot of it you've already heard about already. But my responsibility here is to just report on the two joint committees that we have in conjunction with the Mayor's Council. As you all know, because you sit on one or the other of the committees, we work very well with the Mayor's Council to work in the Investment Plan Committee and the Mobility Steering Committee. So Jeff is going to take it over now and just speak about some of the highlights of that, but we don't need a bunch of repetitive. So go for it, Jeff.
I'll try not to repeat anything
Okay.
then, Chair. So as Kevin mentioned, we are using this dashboard extensively and been trying to adapt it over time to be able to report out both on what it is that we've already committed to in the Mayor's vision, which is that second column, phase 1. And as Kevin gave an update, we are moving along on track or maybe even ahead of schedule on many of the service items and are working very hard on the capital process to hit our timelines for those. So we're really encouraged by the way that's going out, and we have service plans, very detailed service plans for 2017 for all of the sheet changes, and we're starting the process for the 2019 B-line expansion already. So that takes a couple of years to be in place to be able to do that. So the announcements and what a lot of the work of the Funding Strategy Committee has been to sort of understand how the federal budget announcements will impact what the regional funding need will be. So that is one of the dominoes that has now fallen, and obviously the next domino will be where is the provincial government or each provincial party in that regard to then lay clear what the regional funding gap will be, both for capital and then for operating. So that phase 2 column is what we've been working with the Funding Strategy Committee of Board and Mayor's Council members on, and what not to be confused, the phase 2 for us with what the federal phase 2 announcement was on transit. So their transit announcement, I just want to point out, really applies to all of the remaining rapid transit that's in the mayor's vision over the 10 years. So it's both column 2 and 3. So we need to be able to apply, and that's some work that we'll need to do through the business casing and working with you and the mayors on how do we take the $2.2 billion of federal commitment and apply it to those major projects, south of Fraser, LRT and Broadway extension, as well as the critical upgrades to Millennium Line and Expo that are foundational to actually doing expansion. That work, which was identified back in 2014 at just under $1 billion, we took on a key chunk of that in phase 1, but more of that needs to happen before you can actually extend out the system. So that's kind of the crux of what we're working on right now. The number one timing priority is clearly the replacement of the Patello Bridge. So getting to a solution on what the funding will be for that, and in doing so, probably in advance of the rest of the phase 2 plan for transit, which will take a little bit more time. So we're anticipating finishing the final business cases for the 2 rapid transit expansion later this summer, and working with the provincial government exactly on what that funding will look like. Patello needs to advance ahead of that to be able to hit the target. So our goal is to have an investment plan in front of you probably in September of this year, and then working with both the board and the Mayor's Council to have a solution for Patello. That's going to mean that we need to work very closely with the federal government and with the provincial government to move that ahead. And I think I'll pause on that for the funding strategy.
Any questions in relation to this committee? I know we've been kept apprised of it as it's been going on, so if there's nothing else, Jeff, why don't you continue on to the mobility?
Sure, and the Mobility Pricing Commission has been, the steering committee of 7 mayors and 5 board members have met, I think, about a half a dozen times since November of last year to basically take on the charge of the Mayor's Council and the board to prepare for an independent commission to launch in June of this year. So we are on target, whereby recommendations for terms of reference and recommended commission members would be advanced to both bodies in late May. Many of you have probably seen the advertisements have been out in local papers looking for commission members from across the community, looking for community leaders to be involved in that process. That, if you recall, is the mandate of that is really to look at how can we do better at coordinating our pricing in the region, not just on the road, but as well as with other modes such as transit to help achieve our objectives and do so in a fairer manner. It's not intended to be binding, the independent commission work. It would deliver its report spring 2018 to thus the board, the Mayor's Council, and the provincial government consider as you face some decisions around tolling and pricing in the region. The only other thing I would like to say is that any connection to funding for coming out of mobility pricing is intended to be allocated towards that phase 3 column, recognizing that it's going to take several years. It's not part of the initial phase 2 discussions to happen this year, but it needs to progress at this time because it'll take many years to come to fruition, whatever the design and recommendation is.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Jeff? Okay. Jeff, thank you very much. Okay, the next section of our board agenda is our Finance and Audit Committee. So we're getting into committee reports now. And the first committee is the Finance and Audit. So I asked Tony to start the process here.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. With the restructuring of the committees, of course, the Audit and Finance Committee assumed oversight of a number of areas that were previously managed by the Risk and Capital Committee. So that meant that our agenda was a little bit larger, and we needed more time in terms of the meeting. So I'm just going to touch on some highlights, so that way I can keep to the 50 minutes that's been allotted to me.
Thank you.
Okay. You did catch that, eh?
I did. In fact, 10 would be good.
We reviewed 6 reports under the consent agenda items, and although there were no formal presentations, there were a lot of questions asked. And one of those reports is actually in the board package, which is the recommendations coming from the independent review of the 2014 SkyTrain issues. Then we spent a significant amount of time reviewing sort of the capital program, And Sandy, first of all, gave us an overview of the monitoring program for the Patella Bridge. Quite comprehensive, and there's a number of activities that are ongoing, and essentially to ensure that the bridge can be managed and operated safely. We then got a report on the major capital projects. So Zandy covered 4 areas: the rapid transit, the Patella Bridge replacement, the station upgrades, which we've heard about in terms of Metrotown, and the Public Transit Infrastructure Fund. Essentially, good progress is being made on all those projects. We talked a little bit about the importance of the governance structure, about the due diligence work that's ongoing, and the need for regular reporting, particularly as all those projects are starting to ramp up. We spent a little bit of time on information technology. There's about 30 projects that are currently underway, so we got an update from Kathy and from Lloyd on those projects. And one of the issues we talked about was the corporate computing systems policy. This was last amended in December of 2011. And so the committee recommended a new policy for the board to consider, and that's in the consent agenda for today's meeting as well. 2 other issues that the committee recommended to the board. One was the transit tariff amendments, and this is amendments to our tariff consistent with what was in the investment plan approved by the Mayor's Council, and that fare increase will become effective July 1 of this year, and it's the first increase since 2013. The second was the property tax, both the 2017 property tax as well as the replacement tax. Again, this is consistent with what's in the investment plan, and that's also coming to the board for your approval as well later on in the meeting. We also spent a lot of time dealing with the 2016 financial results. So there's 2 items I just want to talk about. First is that the financial results were just excellent in 2016, and Kathy's going to talk a little bit about that later on, so I won't go into detail. The second, and I think just as important, we received a clean audit opinion from KPMG that the financial statements represented fairly in all material respects the financial position of TransLink, and that's important. I just want to take a minute to extend a note of appreciation to Kathy and Christine and all their team in terms of putting together not only the statements but the various financial reports. A lot of hard work in doing that, and I think they did a great job. Now, 2 of those financial reports are included in your audit package. That's the 2016 year-end financial and performance report and the 2016 statutory annual report. And you may be asking why those 2 reports. So the statutory annual report was a report that was required when TransLink had an independent commissioner to be provided to the independent commissioner. When the legislation was changed, that report is now required to be sent to the Mayor's Council. So one of the things we discussed was there's a lot of similarities between the 2 reports, and whether there's an opportunity, if the year-end report meets the requirements of the Mayor's Council, whether that might be sufficient. So there may be some ways that we can maybe streamline our reporting. And then in terms of the last item with respect to the financial statements, we had really good discussions with KPMG on their audit findings, both in camera and obviously with management present. KPMG commented that they really received good cooperation from TransLink and staff, and it really made the audit process go well. And then we concluded our meeting with a hearing from Derek Lee, our internal auditor. We essentially reviewed 4 reports, and for those on the committee, I think we can all attest to the very comprehensive nature of the reports. A lot of value, a lot of good recommendations coming out of those reports, and essentially all those recommendation management is working on implementing them, and the committee looks forward to maybe hearing back later on in the year in terms of how that implementation is going. So that's just a very quick update on a very full agenda.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move now to the consent agenda. So there's 6 items here that are for information. Is there any questions from any board members about the information reports that we have in regards to the Patella Bridge, station upgrades? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. So then we have 3 more that are in the consent agenda, and they require a decision. And that's the amendments to the acceptable use of corporate computing, the year-end financial and performance report, and the statutory annual report. I have a motion to approve those as presented. Okay, all in favor? Thank you all very much. Okay, so we'll move on from that. Okay, that is time then to invite Kathy and Christine up to do their audited consolidated financial statements. Thank you. Is Christine joining you? Oh, okay. I know, you got your matching outfits on. It's the auditor outfit. Yeah.
There you go, yeah,
Yeah, we're in the blue.
Marcella, would you like to join us?
I know. You're just a slightly off tone.
Thank you and good afternoon,
Yeah.
members of the board. I first of all would like to cover off a few of the highlights before I go into the consolidated audited financial statement, if I might. As Tony indicated that, there we go. As Tony indicated, we had a very good financial year, but we also had a very good operating and KPI year. First one is ridership went up to 4.5% last year. That is the highest ridership ever recorded in TransLink's history. So as you may recall, 2013 we experienced a downtrend. It stayed down for 2013, 14, 15 it went up marginally, and 16 it went up significantly. And I want to put that in context. It went up. It's the only time you've ever seen any growth like that was in 2010 when we brought on the Canada line and all the additional service. This basically came out of growth with no additional service on it, so pretty significant. We also saw transit revenue grow by $30 million, which is significant again. As a reminder, that is zero of that, other than, I shouldn't say zero, UPass went up slightly, but no fare increases. So this represents two things that happened. One was increased ridership, which you would expect, and as well as a reduction on fare evasion. Proud to announce we had the complete rollout of Compass Card, including the gate closure, so that happened in April of last year. And we successfully launched a bond issuance for $150 million. As a reminder to our board members, we go directed to the capital markets. So what our operating companies do each and every day is really important to me as a finance person and as to TransLink, because that's what people invest in our operations. It was an outstanding issue. We had almost 3 times the offer. So meaning quickly, we had over $350,000 for a $150 million bond offer. And lastly, we had a funding approved in our 10-year investment plan for our phase 1. So we're actively engaged in that and getting it rolled out through many parts of the operations. So with that, I will maybe talk about the consolidated financial statements, if that would. Okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, as Tony indicated, I'm very pleased. It's always a huge relief for the CFO and our VP of Finance when we do have an unqualified audit and a clean audit. So we're very pleased to announce that, as well as the phenomenal financial results. So on the revenue side, you can see at a very high level, our actual came in at $2.2 billion versus a budget of $1.7 billion, or almost $500,000 or $500 million ahead of what we forecasted. Huge variance, but I'm going to walk you through quickly. The biggest piece was actually the sale of the OTC, the Oak Ridge Transit Center. That accounted for $422 million of that revenue, as well as you'll see taxation revenue was up by $41 million. That's primarily driven by the fuel tax. So with the 17 cents a liter that we get at the retail sales at the pumps, on that counted for $35 million and $4 million on parking rights tax. So you see fuel goes up and you'll see parking usually goes up. They go hand in glove. I think that's driven a lot by the economic position of British Columbia. Very strong year, as well as you've seen that gas prices were relatively flat all of 2016. And also the weakness of the Canadian dollar means that we have far fewer cross-border shoppers and cross-border filler-uppers on that. Transit revenue, as I indicated, was up $33 million. That's driven by, as indicated earlier, ridership and reduction in fare. We also had an increase in revenue in advertising in our park and ride and recovery on fare infractions. So the last legislative change that we had, we actually were able to now collect fares, and those fare revenues go into our coffers rather than provincial coffers on that one. Government transfers were lower than budget. That is a timing issue, is when we receive the money on that. And then lastly, of course, is the sale on OTC. On the expenditure side, we came in at $1.4 billion or $1.5 billion versus a budget of $1.516 billion or 32.6 million favorable or 2.2% favorable to budget. Walking through that really quickly, the bus division came in at about $2 million lower. That's driven by lower market price for fuel. So we lock in 75% of our fuel over a 12-month rolling average, and then we leave the 25% at market value. And so what we budgeted was we were expecting a much bigger increase in fuel pricing than what we received. This was partly offset by increased services that you heard this morning on Access Transit, as well as major repairs. And the offset to that is with the Canadian dollar weakening, we're finding that our maintenance costs are going up because we bring in a lot of parts from other parts of the world on that. Corporate operations, we're 1.7 million above target, and that's probably good news. And why I say that's probably good news is because the reason it's up is because those are your credit charge fees on one, so people using their credit cards by transit, and then also our fair media products. So how many people use Compass cards? It was our first year, and we have about 2 million Compass cards out there. So those are why those costs are up. Rail division is pretty much on budget, but if you kind of peel the onion a little bit, you see that their costs for maintenance is higher, but it's offset by early execution of West Coast Express cars. So we were bought out our lease on West Coast Express, so instead of being an operating expense, it now became a capital expense, and we executed that about a year in advance on that. Roads and bridges, huge variance, $36.6 million as a positive variance. That's twofold. First one is a timing difference. So we help fund the major road network through the lower mainland, and we work in consultation with the municipalities. We agree on which projects we are going to do. They do the work and then they bill us. So there's a timing issue. Often they that the work doesn't get done. That money, we actually reserve it so that, because that work will get done at some point. Also embedded in there is what I would say is the prior year adjustment at a high level for about $22 million. And what that is back in 2011, we started spending money already on the Evergreen line. And we were very anxious. We knew we had to get this work done, but we had no project. So we wrote off that value back then. When the project was completed, we went back and we looked, and we could actually claim some of the write-offs. So we brought it back into our revenue piece. So you'll see that it's been offset. That's not an actual cash. It is a financing adjustment that you've seen in there. And lastly, the other addition is an unfavorable adjustment for interest rates, 4.5, and that's because of the advancement on some of our capital projects that we saw and a bit of a rate difference that we saw over the years. So what does that all add up to? It adds up to a pretty significant surplus in the year. It's 668 million surplus, which you go, yay, that's fabulous. But I'm here to say almost every dollar is accounted for. 442 million, because that's the, or 422, yeah, 422 million came from the Oak Ridge Transit Center. As you have all been involved in that discussion, that money is going to be restricted, and it's restricted to buy real estate to move our transportation up for phase 2. The other piece, as I talked about, was the major road network. So we've made a commitment. We just didn't spend the money this year, so we're holding that so we can match that up. The other pieces that we're starting to see already is by having such a good year end, it's allowed us to do putting service out a little bit earlier. We've seen that with the C-Bus and doing that. So because we've had a cumulative reserve that was fairly healthy, it allowed us to start entering and offering services before we actually started adding the increase in revenues. And then the remainder of that is accounted for a 10-year investment plan. So when we put that money back in, it reduces the burden on our taxpayers going forward. So I'll pause there to see if there's any questions.
Okay. I know the Finance and Audit Committee ran you through lots of questions. I'm just wondering if there's any other questions required now, Murray?
Just, I got curious while you were talking about the $33 million transit revenue increase from fares, and doing a quick calculation, I was trying to figure out how much was fare gate related and how much was growth related. And I'm wondering if you've got those numbers, because earlier in the year it sounded like the fare gates were achieving about quite a few millions of dollars per month increase in revenues. But
yeah, our team actually, and it was actually Jim Chu that had asked that at the previous audit committee meeting. Jim, so hopefully you'll like this answer too. What was very difficult for us as an organization is so many factors changed. We went to alternate fare structure, one zone on buses. So we had an Encompass coming in April, or closing the gates in April. We had a lot of movement from cash to stored value. So in looking at that comparison, there's a lot of factors, but they did do an estimate. So the team said, okay, how can we pull away and come up with some kind of an estimate? It's not scientific, but we figure around 12 to 16 million of that 30 million is because of a reduction in fare evasion. So that's the best estimate that the team could pull together with so many moving pieces.
So annualizing that, it'd be about maybe $20 million of fare evasion revenue, and the rest was increased revenue from growth in ridership.
Yes.
Because I remember us talking about this earlier and saying that the change in the one zone fare, we were anticipating would be approximately revenue neutral. Was that correct?
Yeah, because of the increased ridership, and clearly we have gotten the increased ridership.
So that increased ridership gave us more revenue in total, but less revenue per passenger, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and the average fare comparison, that's where it's very difficult to do that, what that change is, because we had that shift from a lot of customers were paying cash. Now a lot of those are paying stored value, which is a discounted price.
Okay. Well, if I can just ask one more thing, and that's how are the first 3 months of 17 looking in comparison to the number that we achieved in 16?
For ridership?
Well, for revenue.
Or revenue.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably too early to ask you that, but.
Yeah, I don't have March's results yet. I think we are a little bit favorable still to our budget.
And the budget was based on last year's numbers, or was it a?
Yeah, no, the budget was actually based on what we do is we look at where are we around Q2 forecast. So our budget would have a good deal of that increase that we had already seen. So it wouldn't be based on prior to Compass. Again, we're doing it halfway through the year, we're doing an estimate, but it was based on the best information we had then.
And the reason I'm raising this is because
Yeah.
sometimes it's as hard to justify a surplus as it is to justify a deficit. And to demonstrate that in fact we're using the money effectively in 17 that was unexpected, maybe that's the wrong word, but was unanticipated in 16 to the extent that we realized it. And that's why I'm asking is, does 17 look like we will have a smaller variance?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely,
Okay.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Anne?
The federal removal of the tax credit for the transit pass, what are your expectations about effects of that?
So a little bit later on, I will show a slide on the fare increase. So I can answer it now, or I can answer it
Well,
later.
why don't you wait and you can do it at the same
Okay,
time then,
okay.
okay?
Is that okay? Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Kathy? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move on and take a motion to receive these statements as presented and approve them. So all in favor? Thank you all very much. All right, now we'll do the property tax.
Taxes, there you go. Not the, oh, there we go. I don't know where my taxes, yeah. So in front of us today is the bylaw to increase the property taxes. This represents what was allowable in our legislation, plus what was approved in the Mayor's Council budget. And I wanted to draw the attention to our board members that previously we were limited to just a 3% revenue increase year over year. With the new investment plan and the 10-year investment plan, what they allowed is for the growth in the region. And so this plan here and the tax represents that combination, and that combination is about $251 to the average household, which is about a $7 increase or a 2.9% per household increase on their tax bill. And this is was anticipated, is exactly that was what was approved in the 10-year investment plan.
Okay, so you all have the material in front of you, and I'll accept a motion to approve this as presented. Okay, any questions? Thank you. Transit tariff amendments.
Thank you. So in your package today, we have basically two packages of tariff amendments. One that goes effective March 30th, and it is really around the grad passes. So what we've done in the past pre-Compass days is we used to give every grad student just a day pass. So this would help prevent our grad students during celebrations to be going in vehicles. We wanted them to encourage them to use transit. So with the gate closures, it's become a much more challenging way to do it. So what we're actually doing is going out and issuing passes out to the schools. They'll distribute them, and we're looking for an amendment to accept that in our tariff. Okay, and then do you want me to carry on?
Sure, why don't you do it all?
Okay.
Yeah.
So July 1st is really around two pieces. One, I'll talk about, which is the Bowen Island transfer times, and that basically allows increase the transfers from 110 minutes to 180 minutes, and that's primarily driven from the ferry schedule. So it's almost impossible for some of our Bowen Island passengers to be able to complete their journey in the 110, depending on where the ferry schedule is. Before Compass, you know, if they were going, the bus operators could kind of turn a blind eye towards that, or the SkyTrain. But now, because it's electronic and with Compass card, it's either yes or no. So we had to expand that window. So that's what's in front of you today, is to expand that window so our passengers can complete a journey on there. As well as there is a fare increase. This is the first fare increase since 2013. And the average fare increase, next slide here. The average fare increase will go up about $2 on your monthly passes for adult passes, and $1 across the board for concession, and your stored value will go up 10 cents and concession 5 cents. So straight across the board. That is consistent with our 10-year investment plan. So I'll pause there to see if there's any
Okay.
questions.
Did you want to respond to Anne's question?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, Anne. Yeah, we were disappointed to see the public transit tax credit go away. Whenever we put a fare increase in, we're always concerned about the sensitivity around that. We certainly saw it in 2013 where we saw a negative decline. This year, because we're offering so much new service and the advantage of having a really solid financial statement, it allowed us to go out and offer service early before the price increase came in. So we actually think the adverse effect will be minimal. But we haven't ran the numbers of what we think the tax credit is, but we still think it'll probably be minimal at this time.
Was the reasoning that people were buying these, the reasoning for the fence, do you not understand it, what they're
It's funny, I've gone back and read most of the articles and yeah, it is a little puzzling. We're very thrilled that they want to invest money in public transportation, very thrilled that they want to invest money in reducing our carbon footprint. So, yeah.
They give it and they take it away.
Yeah. But I think overall impact, we think is probably going to be fairly minimal because the tax credit was only available for those that run monthly passes, and we're finding with Compass, there's been a switch from the monthly passes to a stored value because it's so much easier now to have a stored value card.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Kathy or Christine? All right, well, hearing none, then I'll accept a motion to approve the transit tariff amendments as presented. And so all in favor? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now I was going to say something about Lloyd, but he's not here. But for those in the Finance and Audit Committee, you will know that Lloyd has decided or is planning to retire at the end of May. And I just told him before that he was too young to retire, but he has this big grin on his face, and so he is retiring. For those of you who weren't here during the Compass days, Lloyd and Kathy kind of single-handedly grabbed this thing, and I feel kind of got it back on track for us. And even though in his absence, I just want to say how much we appreciate his dedication to this organization and all that he's done for us. So please pass on our congratulations for his retirement, even though we're not very happy.
Okay, I would be happy to pass that on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, well, I recognize that we're still behind schedule, but we're going to move on now to the Planning and Stakeholder Committee. So Larry, thank you.
Thank you. In March, we had a busy time. Most of that time, of course, was spent in the customer transit service delivery review and going through all the recommendations and getting it ready to come here to the board today. Again, the job of the staff on this was so exemplary, it made our job a lot easier. But more importantly, I think what they've done is they've peeled that onion back so that all the issues are on the table, and we were able to deal with those with the staff team. That was very, very good. We also dealt with a number of reports, one which are shown on the consent agenda. I just want to notice that one of those is the White Rock Trolley report, which is an independent transit approval that we have to do as a local trolley. It goes around White Rock during summer, I guess it is, during the season. And it's been reviewed, it's consistent with all of our policies, and the recommendation here is to approve that. That's a decision. We also then had, we discussed the reports which are here for information. There's an Access Transit Users Advisory Committee that looks at all dimensions of access to our system and have been advising all year long on many different things. We heard that their whole agenda. We heard about the continuation of the policy review on the transit fares. It's moving into phase 3 now. And we got that report on the ridership growth.
that 4.5% increase, which we've heard all morning. I just want to add one more figure, which I think is astounding, and that I just want to let everyone know that that represents 385 million boardings. 385 million boardings. Now imagine the staff that are dealing with that moment to moment and had to deal with 385 million people boarding our system. And that we found that pretty fascinating, and also the growth we found pretty fascinating as well. And then finally, among the other reports that we dealt with, one is it wasn't actually a report, it was a discussion, because we're now starting the 30-year planning process. And we had a discussion about how to approach that in a very innovative way and to get our consciousness around the changes that are happening in cities and make sure that our process really reflects those changes and an understanding of those changes. And the staff, I think, are pretty excited about what that means in terms of convening work that will start, I think, in June for that. Also, we had a report on the partnerships with other agencies around the region on various matters. And I just want to emphasize just how much the planning team here is working with the other governments and agencies in the region on all kinds of matters to solve their problems and to contribute to their solutions. We talk a lot about they being stakeholders to us, but there's a lot of times when we're stakeholders to them, and that was portrayed to us, and it was a pretty big agenda during the year. One of the most fun things we do in our committee is a committee of staff that's been struck on, called the Customer First Committee. And they always come and tell us the things that they're doing. And they're very excited about many, many different initiatives that are being identified and carried forward by the staff, by the line staff of our organizations, to enhance and increase the quality of the customer service. It's something that was high on our agenda last year, and they've really taken it in hand. We now have we have a whole graph of wonderful moves that you're going to start feeling if you're a user of our systems over the next year or 2 years. And they brought that to us, and the reason I say it's fun is because they're just hilarious. They are enjoying it so much. They're really appreciating having been asked to participate in this, and they're absolutely committed to make sure that they follow through and that we do have those increases in customer service, which will lead to increases in customer satisfaction. And then we had a report on something that is just still in the generative stage or the developmental stage, which is a pilot project for a new kind of delivery of transit, working with a company. It's not been announced yet, but working with a company to bring transit service, because they're in a difficult to access location, to bring more personalized transit service through a organization on financial collaboration, the Vanpool pilot project. And we're pretty excited about that, really as just an indicator of many new kinds of services that we'll start to invent over the next few years to stay up to date with what people need. So, Madam Chair, those are some of the highlights of what we were doing in March.
Thank you very much, Larry. You're a natural fit for this. As a planner, you get very enthusiastic about all the planning things, so it's great. So we have 3 items that are provided to the board for information and 1 for a decision. Are there any questions in relation to the reports that have been provided for information in regards to the Access Transit, the fare policy review, or the ridership growth and rollout of the investment plan? I know we've all heard about it throughout the course of the day, so unless there's anything specific, we can just receive those for information. And can I call for the acceptance of the White Rock trolley service as presented in your package? Thank you, and all in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. We'll move on now to Jim, who probably has a short HR report. HR is always difficult to do.
Right. Well, I get the hint that I know where.
No hinting now.
Well, first of all, let me start on the governance front. We received reports on privacy management from our semi-annual report from our privacy officer here at TransLink. We reviewed a report from our conduct review advisor, Mr. Neil DeGelder. We reviewed annual director and officer code of conduct, the policy, as well as this disclosure statements. And we had a discussion about the 2017 screening panel process. Now, according to the Act, the screening panel has to recommend at least 5 candidates for the Mayor's Council. And we are looking for 1 board member. Marcella has finished her 6 years. So there is a matrices of skills that the board members currently have. We reviewed that and looked at where an area that we may be needing of some additional expertise is or are, and so after identifying those, the next step of the process is the chair and myself will meet with the screening panel at a future date to outline the board's needs. We also talked about the process and made some decisions in terms of appointing directors to subsidiary boards. On the human resources front, we had a report on labor relations. We also received the quarterly TransLink HR report. There was discussion on diversity, and as I mentioned earlier, especially in certain areas where we feel that there could be opportunities for increasing it, such as bus operator representation in that area. And we also spent some time on the CEO performance review, which is 1 year for our CEO, Kevin Desmond. So that will be discussed further in the in-camera board report.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Are there any questions for Jim in relation to his report? All right, well, we'll receive that, and thank you, Jim, for all your work in the HR. So on that note, I think we've come to a close of our meeting, or to the end of our agenda, and I'd like to receive a motion to adjourn our meeting. Thank you all very much.